Woo! Monday morning. What is going on, my friends? We lost an hour. Who had a hard time getting up yesterday morning or this morning? If you're like me, I get up so early, it just doesn't really matter. Not a big difference between 4 or 5 in the morning, because I don't really have what you would call a time-sensitive job, if you know what I mean. But let me tell you what, we have been talking about, I hate when people say Idaho 4, Idaho 4, Idaho 4. I get it. It's the hashtag. It's easy to remember. You know, I'm talking about Ethan, Kaylee, Xana, and Madison. We've had a lot of discussions on here, and like so much at once was coming out, document after document after document after document, evidence. And I'm just like, ooh, I can't keep up. I can't keep up. Like I said to you guys many times, I'm like, I'm just watching over at Jules True Crime Reactions, and then we will get back to it. I promise you we will. Good morning, V. Oakley. I see you. I see Carly with an eye. I see Poppy Red Mustang. I'm so glad you guys are here, but today's show is long overdue. Long overdue. Because there's a lot to break down. A lot. Let's please take a second and tell everybody happy Monday. Yawn. Stretch. We lost an hour, but we're going to get through it. I promise. Woo! Lots going on. From the very beginning, we have had questions about how can you sleep through that? Had a lot of questions about the 911 call. Is someone passed out? They're saying that was the dispatch. We've already heard the probable cause. We've gone through it. That the dog, Murphy, was barking. I have more questions about that. Seems that Ann Taylor doesn't want anyone using the word bushy. I don't know if she's against 70s porn or what's going on there, but she doesn't want that used. That's what we refer to Brian Koberger of. Have a lot going on here. We've heard a lot of people jumping to Dylan and Bethany's defense. I got it. I got it. They say survivor's guilt, this and that. We're going to break survivor's guilt down a little bit more, probably not today, because that's a very loaded statement. But without further ado, I'm going to bring up a great friend of mine, a great friend of this channel, and someone that we all adore and love. We all know her as Jules. As Diva said, Jules is the bomb. True Crime Reactions. Woo! Good morning, Jules. You just flashed me. You turned your camera on.
Yeah.
Damn, girl, how you look.
Hey, it's me.
Hey, everybody. I'm not turning mine on. I got a big zit on my chin.
Oh, I'm staying off the rest of the time. But I just wanted to show everyone.
Being my age and actually having acne.
Oh, gosh. I mean, I get blackheads and stuff. So, you know.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, how can I have a gray hair on my ass and a zit on my chin?
I don't know. sounds like you're having a time. Hormones. So I'm going to start with this. Okay, I'm going to go through I have a few comments I've saved over the years where people got mad at me. This one, I don't know where this chick went. Not even go through it. It says, you need to let this the roommates should have heard something go. Have you done any research on this or what? The roommates were on the bottom floor. It locks separately from the rest of the house. All untrue. It's a party house. Lots of noise. They tuned it out. They make it sound like they have on CPAP machines and ear pods. No joke. That's wild.
The murder victims were asleep in bed.
False.
No, false.
False.
They were stabbed in the throat and torso. True, but false.
Yeah.
They did
False.
not scream. The roommates did not see anyone lying anywhere.
False.
False. They couldn't wake the other up, and the doors were locked.
Semi true false, because we were told that whenever first responders got there that the doors were open, but we've also been told that they couldn't get Xana's door open, and that's why they called people over, because the door couldn't come open. So who knows?
They couldn't wake the other up and their doors were locked. They called friends, still couldn't get in rooms. So then they called 911. OMG. 1 hour of you whining about the roommates. Do some research.
Yeah.
Well, Skillet, I didn't have to do any research. The research was done for me because the evidence, which I cannot collect, is coming out slowly but surely.
Mm-hmm. All of it.
We were speaking about this before the show, and we have a lot to talk about today. So I hope everybody took their Wheaties, their multi-meal, whatever it is you take, because we know people have a bad taste in their mouth about all fundraising. I just say, it is what it is. Don't know what to tell you. My question is, since they won't give us a time of death on Ethan, Kaylee, Xana, and Maddie, do you think that will, when it comes out, change the parents' opinions? Do you think that the bell is going to ring that somebody could have been saved?
Yeah. Well, I'm really curious as to what the death certificates say, because I know that they've told us that they can't give us time of death and they've given 1,000 excuses, but is it just like blank on the death certificates? I'm guessing so. But I do feel like they're hiding that for a good reason. And if there's any truth to what Christy Consalvis has said, several, almost 2 years ago now at this point, that Xana's door was shut and they couldn't get it open and Ethan was behind the door, well, that to me means he was on the floor. And that means that at some point the door was shut and he tried to get to the door, which means at some point he was still alive. I don't care what they try to say. The way that we've been lied to about them being asleep in their beds to what we know now, somebody could have been saved most likely, especially with, look how fast that response time was. Look how fast the cops got there. Somebody could have been saved.
Super fast.
Mm-hmm.
Super fast.
And that's one thing that they would definitely be too scared to come across state lines for.
I would think.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you and I were talking before, and I'm sure some of you in here know what I'm talking about. Some of us have had a little, as some people around here call it, a purple drink, had a little drinky drink. And it could be anything from the air conditioning coming on. Any sort of adrenaline is going to sober you right up.
Quick as hell.
People say Dylan and Bethany, with all this going on, just retired to their beds to sleep it off. How does that make any sense? I mean, unless you're under anesthesia, how does that make sense?
I mean, it doesn't, especially whenever the text messages show that they were both very well aware that there was something crazy happening. Okay. And that's just the ones that we're being, shown. Some of us have seen other ones that we're being told are real, but we haven't seen those come out yet.
And big question I have, because it's still looming out there, he should have had help. He had to have had help, because look at the layout of the house. How did he? Now, of course, the house has been bulldozed. I don't agree with that, and nobody has to agree with me on that. I think it
should have never been taken down. Did you see what they are going to put in court as its replica? They built a freaking dollhouse.
It looks like something my kids could have put together with Star Wars Legos.
Exactly. And it's not even being done by like a professional that actually does it. Somebody with a hobby, a passion for it. It's being done by some fed with no creativity and no give a shit. So yeah, it's going to be great.
Now, I understand it would be extremely eerie to go through the house, but how would the jury get an actual understanding of the layout of the house without going to the house physically? Because, I mean, to this day, the layout of the house confuses me.
Yeah.
To this day. And I've looked at it a million times. I've seen all the videos. So many people have come and gone over the years with this case.
I mean, even like the Zillow videos and stuff, I'm still turned around in there.
It's a very odd ass house, especially since it has that like addition to it. It's very strange. And made like crap because it folded like cardboard.
I did see that. Boy, that was spooky.
Yeah.
So we're going to go through. Let's start with this. And we have a lot to talk about with these texts because they haven't released all of them. You can't tell me there's not phone calls in here.
No, there's definitely stuff missing.
Because you cannot tell me in this 2.5 minutes that Dylan and Bethany were only talking to each other, because Dylan says to Bethany, no one is answering.
Yeah, and Christy told us, and I believe Ethan's sister-in-law came out really early on and said, you know, Dylan was calling everyone in the freaking house, like in a panic, like frantically calling. You're not frantically calling, you know, 5 other people besides yourself back to back to back to back to back because you want to tell them goodnight. That's not how that happens.
Mm-hmm. Want to say something about this comment? Addicted to art and crime. Welcome, welcome. Happy Monday morning. Hopefully the time change didn't bother you. This has happened before. There's actually a case in St. Louis where they destroyed the house. Now, not because they really cared about people seeing it, but for other reasons. Dilapidated, you know, needed to be condemned.
Yeah.
And they did destroy evidence without even knowing.
That's probably exactly why it got destroyed to begin with. I believe that it's my opinion that the university took over this situation for a reason, and that house got destroyed because they wanted it to be destroyed because something was in there and they didn't want people to know. I think that's exactly why it got taken out. I mean, they didn't just destroy it. They buried it, burned it, threw chemicals on it, and disintegrated it. They did everything they could to make this thing non-existent. And that's not an exaggeration. That's literally what happened. Mm-hmm. Why? Why go through so many extra extremes to make sure that every little piece of DNA gets completely destroyed? Why?
And I said I can't say day one that I started talking about this case because I was a couple of days late on it, but that's just me. I would say day 2 or 3. I'm like, this is going to be a very different case than we're used to following, because there is going to be a lot of red tape, bureaucracy, and things from the university.
Even though it was an off-campus house and these girls had leases with somebody that didn't have any affiliation at all with the school. Yep,
it still says Moscow, Idaho, has all of that all over it.
Mm-hmm.
So at 4:22 in the morning, Dylan says, I'm really confused right now. Odd statement. Dylan says, Kaylee, what's going on? Okay, a lot of people have questions in the 2.5 minutes. Why did nobody just hit 911 and hide?
Mm-hmm. Or if they were too scared to talk. I mean, you can text 911. You obviously have no issue texting your friend. Why can't you text somebody and say, someone's in this damn house, I'm too scared to talk, call 911 right now? Like, it would have taken 5 seconds.
Yeah. So Dylan says, what's going on? Bethany says to Dylan, yeah, dude, WTF. Bethany says to Dylan, Xana was wearing all black. Okay, I'm wearing all black right now too. But if somebody comes in my house wearing all black, I don't think we're going to be confused with each other. Dylan, I'm freaking out right now. Dylan says to Bethany, no, it's like ski mask almost. Bethany says, shut the fuck up. Bethany says, actually? Dylan says to Bethany, like he had something over, I think it's supposed to say his forehead and little of his mouth.
Yeah.
Dylan says, I'm not kidding. I'm so freaked out. Then she says, so am I. My phone is going to die. I'm sure that's a cuss word. Yeah. Then she says, come to my room. Okay, this is where we get to stunting of maturity, because you have a killer in your house. You can't get a hold of your roommates all at once. You don't say, run down here and let's have a slumber party.
Yeah. But notice it sounds like they both are freaked out. So you got 2 grown-ass women both telling each other they're freaking out, and still both of them are consciously making the choice not to do anything further. And something else that we also noticed in these text messages is this, notice how none of them seem to be worried that they might be next about whatever's happening.
Why? That right there.
because I would have been shitting bricks.
Yeah, and if you could have run down to Bethany's room, why aren't you running out that damn front door?
Mhm.
I don't think that they were worried that they were going to be touched. And they would have had to have known that beforehand, in my opinion. That's just my opinion.
Just my opinion. Come to my room. Run down here. Okay, now then I'm going to show this as part of the timeline. This was a Vandal alert that came out at 1:04 p.m. Okay, the last text message that we know of was at 4:24 and 27 seconds a.m.
Do you have the rest of the text messages?
No, we'll get to those. I'm just getting like a little bleep right now.
Okay, but you do have the ones that happened afterwards, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So then we jump to 1:04 p.m. when the whole student body is alerted. Moscow PD investigating a homicide on King Road near the campus. Suspect is not known at this time. Stay away from the area and shelter in place. That's a huge time gap.
It's also wild that they took an hour to even send a Vandal alert after the cops responded. That's kind of crazy.
I'm not sure how long it took them to alert the university and figure out it could be tied or think it could be. That I don't know. But that's, again, we're looking at a timeline.
Yeah.
Let's rewind and go to what little bit we know about the DNA. I'm not one of those that's sold on polygraphs, as everyone knows, and touch or transfer DNA isn't really in my bag of tricks. It's been overturned in too many courtrooms, but we're going to talk about this DNA.
There is new evidence this morning connected to the Idaho murders case where 4 students were fatally stabbed inside of an off-campus home in November of 2022. Now a new filing reveals a 3-person mixture of unknown DNA was found under a 21-year-old University of Idaho student's fingernail.
All right, let's go. I know there's a lot of speculation as to who had it. Ethan's 20, Kaylee's 21, Maddie's 21. Now, they have been out at the bar, dancing, seeing people. Would it be uncommon that they had other people's DNA under their fingers? One of the girls has like manicured nails, like you get done at the salon. I'm not taking up for Bushy. No offense, Ann Taylor, but I'm going to keep calling him that. But
Well,
3 types
yeah,
of
it's not I don't feel like it's too uncommon, especially for being out and about with all them people. My problem is that they have no answer for what exactly takes up the mixture. Like, how do you not have those answers at this point in time? Why are we still guessing?
So it's either Kaylee or Maddie that had it, because they said a 21-year-old student.
Oh, no, it was Maddie.
Brian Koberger, who you see here, is facing 4 charges of first-degree murder in the case. His defense team has asked the DNA evidence be kept from the jury because jurors could believe that it is Koberger's. According to his defense, it is not. Koberger has pleaded not guilty. His trial is set to start in August.
If it starts in August, who knows? Because if they have any kind of election going on around there, we know how that goes. Then it could be pushed until the spring of 2026. I'm just saying that's how it goes. Now, there is one family in particular. You can probably guess who it is, but I don't want to say it out loud. That this wants us to believe that Maddie was not the target. I can give you some clues because a member of this family kept saying out of all the wounds, Kaylee had it the worst. I have a hard time believing that, considering Xana basically had her fingers chopped off. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't honestly think that he knows a damn thing about Xana and Ethan's wounds, because why the hell would he? It's not his business. The cops aren't going to tell him that. So unless that information got shared with him, then he doesn't know that. All he really knows is the difference between Maddie and Kaylee. And honestly, I believe that out of anyone, if anybody was asleep enough to not put up too much of a fight, it would have been Maddie, just by what we've been told circumstantially about what was happening in that house. And I mean, wounds being worse on Kaylee than Maddie, it could mean that the person was more aggressive towards her, but it also could mean that she just put up more of a fight, so her wounds were worse because the guy was, or whoever it was fighting, you know, just as much back and had to really amp it up because she was maybe amping it up. So I just think he knows Maddie and Kaylee. I don't think he knows all four.
Nope. We have a question from the chat. Who got food at the food truck? Kaylee and Madison.
Yeah.
Got the DoorDash, Xana. And what time did the DoorDash get there? Or do we truly know it's for Xana, or did she order for Ethan?
Well, okay, so there's always been speculation, especially with the timing. What I do know now is that the state has submitted a list of self-authenticating evidence, and one of the files is the DoorDash records for both Xana and Ethan. But that's all we know. We have no clue as to if somebody answered the door and took the food, if whoever it was dropped it at the door. Like, we don't know any of that. We also don't even honestly, we just don't know any of that. We don't freaking know anything.
Nope, we do not at all. Now let's get back to the unsealed court documents. Of course, this is about 911 calls. This is a short clip. Of course, we're going to still talk about it because we got a lot to talk about.
Almost 2.5 years after the brutal Moscow murders, we are finally getting our hands on never-before-seen text messages and a 911 call from surviving roommates the morning after the murders. Grab 2's Connor McAvoy has been combing through those documents, even spoke with a lawyer on what this evidence means for the upcoming trial. Connor?
Well, it's been a little over 2 years since Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonsalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin were found murdered in their Moscow home. Tonight, we're seeing what their surviving roommates were texting and saying to dispatchers when they made that gruesome discovery. And the prosecution wants to use these messages as evidence in Brian Kohberger's upcoming trial. The text messages revealed in newly released court documents are between two surviving roommates identified by their initials DM and BF. They begin at around 4:22 a.m. the morning of the murders. DM texts, "I'm freaking out right now," and BF soon responds, saying, "Come to my room." The messages discuss the two being scared while at the scene. They also go on to show the two discussing someone wearing a ski mask. Their statements outside of court, the prosecution argues, is an example of what attorney Chris Bugbee says is known as a present tense impression. The prosecution is arguing the text outline a timeline of events the night of the murders and should be admitted as evidence in the case.
An observation that a witness was making outside of court, but during the time that they're observing whatever it is that they are describing.
Bugbee is a criminal justice attorney in Spokane and practices in Washington and Idaho. He's not connected to this case, but agreed to talk to us to provide some analysis. He says this would not make the text messages hearsay and would be taken into evidence.
Well, I would think so. I would think so. We see trials all the time where the text messages are entered in as evidence.
Oh yeah, those Gypsy Rose texts are great.
Well, I'm telling you what, those are perfect, man. Those
wild.
Megan Boswell, Leilani Simon, Letitia Stout, she took the cake with her Facebook and text bullshit. So, I mean, why do they want to throw these out? This is giving them somewhat of a timeline.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, the initial timeline, I would say, is like 2.5 minutes, really. Because it's around this time that the roommates couldn't answer. That's when 911 should have been called.
Yeah, because these text messages start technically after the car's gone, because they have the car leaving at 4:20, and I think like it says something about calling around like 4:19 to 4:21. She was trying to get a hold of people, but then the first text that it gives us is 4:22, I think. So yeah, it's like all of this starts after their intruder or whatever SV1 leaves the area, according to them.
Well, and also, I mean, this is a good college try. Okay, it is. Defense attorneys do this. It would be shocking if they didn't try to throw things out.
Court documents also show Kohberger's defense team arguing against the death penalty if he is found guilty. At the same time, the state is arguing the recording and transcript of the 911 call made when Xana Kernodle was initially found dead at the scene should also be brought into evidence. It reads a person on the line saying, "One of the roommates who's passed out and she was drunk last night and she's not waking up." The transcript goes on to read, "They saw some man in their house last night." Yeah. Judge John Judge in Latah County ruled the recording can be used as evidence before the trial was relocated to Ada County. The defense argues the evidence was not made available to them and gets in the way of Kohberger's right to a fair trial.
Their argument that they've hid all the discovery in a haystack and that therefore it's not available to us even though it's been provided, that is a legitimate argument and is something that I think the state ought to be worried about.
An argument Bugbee says could lead to a potential delay in the trial if the death penalty.
Okay, your opinion. Why would the last statement be something that the state needs to worry about? Because I don't see why the state needs to worry about that.
Can you go back and show me what it says? I caught them lying about what the 911 call said, so I was going back to grab my document.
Yep. Good.
Fair trial.
Their argument that they've hid all the discovery in a haystack and that therefore it's not available to us even though it's been provided, that is a legitimate argument and is something that I think the state ought to be worried about.
Okay.
Well, because they are handing them over a bunch of nothing. So we have 68 terabytes of data in this case, and pretty much everything that we have heard that they've spoken about in court or argued with each other about in documents has been pretty much proven inaccurate. Like we even have like a 7-minute timeline compared to what the feds have compared to what Moscow put in when it comes to Kohberger's phone actually going off network. 7 minutes in a vehicle, you're covering a lot of area. And for the state then to argue, well, in the direction, that doesn't matter either. Well, that's giving them leeway for all this unnecessary video surveillance footage. And that's the mass of these 68 terabytes. I know for a fact it's the mass of these 68 terabytes because they've come out and given us the Frank's Motion discovery title list and anything about the devices. There's nothing found on any of the devices that connect Kohberger to the victims or to the house. So there's nothing from the devices turned in. That means none of the terabytes are the device information because there was nothing. But then we also see that they still have Floyd's cannabis shop as one of the security footages, but they've already said in court that that's not Brian's car. What they did say is that they recognized that it was a Hyundai Elantra from the 1125 Ridge Road camera, but guess what's not listed as evidence? The Ridge Road camera. So there's a whole bunch of nothing here. And that whole needle in a haystack thing, I mean, technically is putting it lightly because most of it's not even organized. And the defense team is getting basically yelled at by the judge because nothing is labeled correctly. And the defense is not wanting to relabel anything as to not confuse the docket already because of the way things have already been submitted, but because they're having to use the state's bullshit and horrible organization and try to fight the case without changing what was given to them. It's it looks bad on them. And the court's like, you need to hand me this. And why is this so disorganized? And she's like, that's how it was given to us. And Mowry even said that he would get stuff from the footage or things that he had to put in a file folder. And he didn't look at it to even validate that it was valid, like that it belonged there. He admitted this on the stand. He didn't check it, didn't verify it. There was no peer-to-peer anything. He didn't label it. He didn't make sure it was chronological order or by date and time. Like it just all got thrown into a stack. It's like, what are they supposed to do with all of this? They have to literally fight through a bunch of nasty mess. And then on top of that, have the state also try to say, well, we don't have it. Well, we don't have it. Well, we don't have it. Well, you don't have anything important, but you're handing me a bunch of junk. Like, it's literally the most disorganized dumpster I've ever seen.
Sloppy.
Disgusting.
Sloppy.
Because this is just the one that we know. If this is how they handle all their cases in Idaho, what the hell is really going on and how many people might have actually been wrongfully convicted for shit because this is how they do things. This is normal.
I don't know if it's an Idaho thing or if it's a that county thing.
Or just a world thing, because I think we kind of see this everywhere all the time, which is the sad part.
Yeah, we see some sloppy people that just basically do their 8 and skate, and they don't quite understand the importance of their job. I agree with my friend Stacy. She said they should have left the house until after court. I couldn't agree with you more.
An argument Bugbee says could lead to a potential delay in the trial if the death penalty is still an option.
If the only way short of dismissing the petition for death, if the only other way to preserve Mr. Kohberger's rights is to give the defense more time, you may see another continuance.
I see that coming because now they're pulling that he has autism. And
well, that doesn't matter for right now.
And
I
that,
think that's
and
a
that,
big
that
thing.
doesn't work anywhere else. So it's not going to fly in a state where they have the firing squad.
Well, right, but that's not being submitted for the guilt phase. That's being submitted for if he does get convicted. That's what they have to like use to fight the death penalty. But a lot of people are confusing it as like trying to say that this is him admitting that he did it and this is his excuse, but that's not what's happening. It's all for mitigation. That's what gets confusing whenever the court is not separated out differently. They had an argument where they had wanted to actually have it trifurcated instead of bifurcated, so that all of this kind of stuff didn't come out until if there was a conviction. Because it coming out now, I mean, that's what a lot of people are like. It's like it gives a false pretense or a false sense of what's actually happening. They're not trying to use this as an excuse or anything when it comes to guilt or innocence.
It happens in every case. They're just trying to get ahead.
Yeah, and plus they also have scheduling order. Like the court has given them deadlines to get a bunch of stuff about the death penalty turned in.
All right, we're going to get through some more of the 911 call and the texts. I'm not a huge fan of law and crime for a personal reason, but I'm not going to be petty today because this is too important.
Idaho students were murdered in a house off campus in November of 2022. 2 roommates were there and were not harmed, thankfully. Now we're getting some answers about what happened that night from text messages the roommates exchanged right after police say the murders of Maddie Mogan, Kaylee Gonsalves, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle were carried out. Now I'm going to go over those text messages along with the transcript of the 911 call that was placed more than 8 hours after the murders. The prosecution wants to introduce.
Okay, right there, 8 hours, more than 8 hours. Let's talk about that. We were talking about how people can be, some people call it scared straight. Some people call it, sobered up real quick. So how could anyone send those messages? And both the girls got up around the same time. And no, I'm not saying Dylan and Bethany are part of this. It just will. I need a lot more info for this to make sense. Jules, what do you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, none of it makes sense from the way that they're behaving. Again, they're not acting like they're scared that somebody's going to come after them. And I know that you're probably going to end up pulling up more, but there's something else that Bethany says to Dylan later on to where I'm like, well, you would only be saying something like that if you really knew that that was actually the case. And there's just no indication that they were trying to escape, that they were worried that somebody was going to hurt them. And that's just freaking odd. And then to pretend to me later on that like you're kind of just like pretending to me on the 911 call. And it's like you don't want to take responsibility for shit because you're calling 4 other people over that we know of to be on the scene. You have them be the ones who basically get on the phone and talk to the police. Like you're trying to literally diminish your knowledge and, just dare I say culpability, because you're sitting there, trying to minimize literally everything and act like everyone else. Oh, well, they were on scene and they're going to talk to 911 and I'm just here. That's weird to me. And they're both doing it. Why would they both be doing it? Why wouldn't one have been like, oh, hell no, I'm the frick out of here? No, they're both just like, just come to my room.
But then even bringing the dad into it.
Yeah.
Texting.
That was like, what, an hour and a half before the 911 call, something like that?
Yeah. Who would tell their daddy that something might have happened without them saying, hey, if you're too dumb to call the damn police, I'll do it for you.
Yeah.
Don't you leave your room. Don't you do anything. You find somewhere to hide. This is crazy.
And that's just the text exchange at that time. We don't know if there was conversations prior to that.
There's got to be phone calls, and I don't think their asses were asleep for 8 hours.
Hell no.
A lot of people. I mean, look at the troops that showed up when it was time to call 911. Spoiler alert, there was a lot.
And dare I say it,
911 call as evidence at Brian Kohberger's trial later this year. Kohberger faces the possibility of the death penalty if he's convicted of the murders. Kohberger's lawyers are also asking again to strike the death penalty. More on that later. Prosecutors say the texts between the 2 surviving roommates, DM and BF, provide a timeline and should be allowed under an exception to the hearsay rule at trial.
the two exceptions. Present sense impression, that's a statement describing or explaining an event or condition made while or immediately after the declarant perceived it, or an excited utterance, a statement relating to a startling event or condition made while the declarant was under the stress of excitement that it caused. Now, the prosecutors say one surviving roommate, DM, was awake and texting the town's rideshare driver at 2:10 a.m. to see if he was driving that night. Then prosecutors write, from 4:19 and 7 seconds to 4:21 and 50 seconds, DM attempts to call BF, Xana Kernodle, Kaylee.
Okay, lots of questions about the rideshare. The dude's name is out. Lots of people have been talking about him, not just since this came out, but before. I left it alone because I thought, well, I didn't know Dylan was texting him. It makes sense, hey, are you out? Are you giving rides? It turns out he's actually a university employee. So let's go to Eric. Again, this is going to get confusing, but I know we can walk it through.
Oh, and his wife was pregnant, 9 months pregnant at the time all this stuff was going on, and she works for the Moscow Police Department.
Yes. Explain that.
Insane.
This is from a channel called Bubbly Waters that put something together about Eric is his name.
Hello there. I was just doing searches on Gower and, things like that, and this popped up. I thought it was kind of interesting. In fact, I thought it was very interesting. Why would he have aliases? I mean, he works for the University of Idaho. He still works there, actually. That's where he was working when he did the rideshare. So, another big truck. Big truck. Well, the tire looks wonky. It's a picture when it loads up. It's weird. Not too busy checking out the...
Okay, when people bore me with Google Maps, I have to interject. But anyhow, what's up with him having all these aliases? Having an alleged criminal history. His wife is a police officer in Moscow. Dylan
in the admin office. I don't think she's a cop. But last I heard, she worked for the people that do the FOIAs. Worked in admin.
Okay, admin. Thank you for correcting me. I think they're trying to point at the white car out there. I think we are safe to say that's not the same car.
No, he drove a white four-door car, but I believe it was a Nissan. Which conveniently, whenever there's nothing official out there, but there's an article out there and a couple of rumors that the original car they were looking for was a Nissan, and then it switched to the Hyundai Elantra. But that's just a couple articles. There's nothing from the police.
Don't know. Another big truck. Big black trucks everywhere. Dang. Dang, that looks like a weird, strange looking house. Kind of looks like a... When they're shaped like that, it always makes me think of a cult or something. Okay, let's see how many more trucks we can find down here. It's a roundhouse.
Okay, we're not really about trucks or roundhouses. I want to talk more about the driver. Because when it came out that she texted the driver, was it, 14 minutes after the girls were brought home, or was it 14 minutes before?
After.
Okay. Because I've seen two different articles, and you know how that goes.
Yeah, it was after. Well, it's the documents. I have all the docs. The docs say it was after 2:10.
Yeah, this one's on here right now. Dylan was awake and texting at 2:10 a.m. From 4:19 to 4:21, she attempts to call BF. Xana, Kaylee, and Madison, all calls are unanswered. The records of these calls are not hearsay, as they do not meet the hearsay law, as we know before. Thank you, Angel P. She's back from vacation, gifting those Crime Lines and Lies memberships. Thank you, girlfriend.
Gonsalves and Madison Mogan. All of those calls were unanswered. According to the timeline laid out by police and prosecutors, Xana, Kaylee, and Maddie had been murdered by that point in time, and DM had seen a man in black carrying a vacuum-type object walking through the house. Then, from 4:22 and 8 seconds to 4:24 and 27 seconds, DM and BF sent the following text messages. DM wrote to BF, "No one is answering." And then DM followed up with, "I'm really confused right now." DM then texted Kaylee Gonsalves, "Kaylee, what's going on?" BF then sent a text to DM saying, "Yeah, dude, WTF." BF then followed up to DM with, "Xana was wearing all black." DM then said to BF, "I'm freaking out right now." DM then said to BF, "No, it's like ski mask almost." BF says to DM, "STFU," probably in disbelief. BF then says to DM, "Actually," and DM responds to BF like he had something over his forehead and a little in mouth. DM then says to BF, "I'm not kidding, so freaked out." BF says to DM, "So am I." DM then says to BF, "My phone is going to die." BF then says to DM, "Come to my room." She follows up with, "Run, down here." These text messages raise questions about whether the roommates may have heard more than what we've read about previously. The DM heard crying and a man saying, "It's okay, I'm here to help." Then DM places a phone call. At 4:24 and 39 seconds, DM calls Ethan Chapin, and the call was unanswered. DM and BF continue to text. At 4:24 and 58 seconds, DM texts BF, "I'm scared though," and BF responds at 4:25 and 16 seconds.
I don't think it says I'm scared, though. I think it says I'm screwed, though, because there's drugs in the house.
Yeah, that's what I thought it said too, but a lot of people are saying that it's probably scared.
I've already had people arguing about
Yeah.
it. Like, no, even autocorrect wouldn't do it. And kids
See,
have
someone tried to say, "Oh, that's a common mistake when you write scared." I'm like, bro, in what freaking alternate universe is that a common mistake? No, it's not.
R is
R. That's what I said. I was like, no, bro.
That's what I think it means. I'm screwed, though, because it has been rumored for years that Bethany had drugs at the house.
Yeah. Yeah.
And scared, which you should be, is even more reason to hit the 911. Ilyonka said it's screwed. Kelly said definitely screwed. Jazzy said no, she was scared.
Either way, she's scared, didn't call 911. They still went downstairs and just hung out for the night. It's ridiculous.
Seconds. Yeah, I know, but it's better than being alone. Then there's a gap in texting and calling. The next morning at 10:23 a.m., DM texts Kaylee Gonsalves, "Please answer." Then she sends a text to Maddie Mogan, "Are you up?" And then again to Kaylee Gonsalves, "Are you up?"
Okay, let's say at 10:23, it was a bad dream. We have slept off the natty light and the pot, whatever we had going on. At 10:23, why would you not feel safe enough just to leave your room and go say, knock on the door and say, "Hey, you up? Something weird happened overnight." Please answer. Are you up? Are you up? I don't know. I don't know.
More than an hour later, the prosecution says there are more text messages. At 11:39 a.m., DM texted her father. Then at 11:50, DM received a text from someone identified as Jay that says, "Bro." At that same moment, DM calls someone identified as EA. And then at 11:51, she receives another text from Jay. Minutes later, that 911 call is placed. And at 1:04 p.m., DM received a Vandal alert that was a text from the university telling the students all to stay in their homes.
Okay, so she got hers earlier than this one that came out. Because sometimes people, when they don't get the time until they open it. I've heard that before. I don't know. I'm still trying to get over the father that was contacted that basically didn't have any shits to give. Anything that you want to say about that, Jules?
Yeah, I'd love to know what the hell she was telling him. Like, was it normal? Like, was it a normal conversation and she was just like lying to him, acting like everything was fine? Or was she actually asking him something? Was there actually a conversation showing something about what happened? Because they're just really kind of establishing it as a sort of a timeline situation.
Uh-huh.
So I guess it would really just depend. But I mean, if she is already like proving that she was freaking out and it was already at that point, an hour before that or so, trying to get a hold of the girls upstairs, and they just having a normal ass conversation, well, that says a hell of a lot about her. And if he was being told about everything that was happening and he still elected not to call 911, then that says a shit ton about him and whatever the frick they were trying to like plan.
The real Gemini, no lie 7 said, no, it's scared. The only thing that I know is if I type in scared, it doesn't take out the A and capitalize the R. And I know how kids this age disguise their words. They're smart with technology. I mean, super smart.
Yeah, and if you look at a keyboard, the W is next to the E more than it's next to the A. So I feel like that mistake wouldn't be made if it was scared. That's just my opinion.
She says, give her a little credit. And if Bethany was going to school, and I seriously don't think she's a bad girl and has no record, and the Ruggs was a rumor. Well, the Ruggs actually is not a rumor anymore. And I also agree with you. They're going to be connected to this for the rest of their lives. And they have a ton of woulda, shoulda, coulda going through their minds.
And if they really felt like they had the right guy in jail, they wouldn't be scared to come back and testify against him. But we already know for a fact that Dylan doesn't even recognize the man.
Well, and we know that Bethany, in the state that she's from, put up a lot of front to not testify. I don't know if they that.
Well, I talked about that not long ago because I had like a lot of questions about if they ever followed through with anything. The last court document we have is the agreement for the defense team to go to her to interview her. And we never got anything saying that was canceled or anything like that. So all we can really assume is that it happened. They're keeping their stance that she has some sort of exculpatory evidence that they're going to present at trial. And that's it. That's where we're at with it.
And exactly what could that be? And if you're that scared, it would be easier to hit the 9 and the 1-1 and just hunker down in your room and wait for help. And we saw the response. It was fast once they were.
And again, they're both acknowledging that they're both feeling some type of way. It's not just one, it's both of them. And both of them collectively did not do anything. And also, we're not worried, again, that they were going to be targeted next. You can't have both of those things together in this scenario and not be like, bro, you're full of shit.
And remember, nobody is saying Dylan and Bethany murdered their roommates. But there is a huge problem with the timeline and a huge problem with when 911 was called. I've talked about this, for years now, because there is a huge chance that someone could have been saved. And unfortunately, they have to live with that.
Yeah. Now, prosecutors, of course, want to play the 911 call for the jury. The motion states, the statements on the 911 call are hearsay, but fall within firmly rooted hearsay exceptions and should be allowed. In general, testimony that is hearsay is excludable at trial. However, there are many exceptions to this rule. 2 firmly rooted exceptions are Idaho Rule of Evidence 803, present sense impression, a statement describing or explaining an event or condition made while or immediately after the declarant perceived it, and Idaho Rule of Evidence 803-2, excited utterance, a statement relating to a startling event or condition made while the declarant was under the stress of excitement that it caused. Now, the 911 call was placed at 11:56 a.m. on November 13th, It confirms that a male friend of the roommates found Xana Kernodle's body. HJ located the unresponsive body of Xana Kernodle and informed BF and DM to call 911. EA was present at the time all declarants personally perceived the event, Kernodle being unresponsive. The majority of the declarations were describing to dispatcher Carolina Calvin what they were perceiving, present sense impressions. Those state.
Okay, hold on. I got to go back to this. To the call. EA was present at the time. All declarants personally perceived the event. Kernodle was unresponsive. Now, I don't understand the confusion with her being passed out, considering there had to have been a lot of blood, and she had no fingers on one hand.
She was also on the floor.
The majority of the declarations were describing to dispatcher Carolina Calvin what they were perceiving, as in present sense impressions. Those statements relate to Kernodle being passed out, not waking up. The declarations were made after HJ discovered Kernodle's body. Now, I personally have always believed that the 911 call was made for Xana's room. Nobody even attempted to go upstairs. Maybe they just assumed since Kaylee and Maddie weren't replying to them, they know they're a clique, they're best buds. They could already be out messing around. Who knows? Hold on. Stroop Wave 1. Who's on psychedelics? And I do have compassion. I have compassion for these four right here.
Yeah, the reason we're here.
I do believe we're here for these four. I do believe if someone had dialed the 911, somebody would be alive and a lot of evidence would have been saved. So I don't know anything about psychedelics or anything like that.
Well, it was said that she was saying that she didn't know if her brain was playing tricks on her, that she felt like she was hallucinating. And there was some information that came out prior to a lot of the information now about Dylan. And the guy got the info before December 3rd. So even before they had Brian's information and had an arrest, he was being told by people that knew Dylan the exact same thing, that she didn't know if it was real, if it was a dream, that she was tripping out real bad and hallucinating, and that she had taken, she wasn't somebody who just like smoked a little bit, drank a little. She was very beyond that, according to a lot of people that know this girl. So to know that she has, you know, things on her walls that aren't talking or moving towards her, and she knows the person was white. She doesn't know how the person was white. She just knows they were white. You know, weeks later, I see a fireman. The chick was on some shit. Okay. But Stroop also is from my channel, or at least is on my channel quite a bit, leaving comments. So whatever I'm saying is nothing new to this person. So I don't know why they're yelling. I'm just saying. And hello to everybody who is here, by the way.
They're here for you. They're here to give you hell. Okay, I feel much better.
Yeah, and I'm like, this isn't new to you. I know your username. You hear me say this kind of stuff constantly. I'm very honest about how I feel about the situation. And just like I've always said, I'm here for Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and Ethan because that's what brought us to this case. We were about them way before we even knew about Dylan, Bethany, and their bullshit, before we even knew who Brian was, before the Consalvices started showing their asses. And our goal has never changed. Truth and justice for the four that lost their lives, no matter what it means. And that's just what it is.
And if it gets mud in the girls' eyes, you know what? They're alive and they can wash that mud out and they can go on about their lives.
Yep, and Steve's already warned us. Mud was coming. That's what he said.
They get their college degrees and they can go off to work. They're going to be in other states anyway, probably. Get married, have babies, and it'll be a story to tell someday.
Yeah, but
these four don't get it. They don't get it. They will not get it. They will not get to move forward. It's impossible.
Yep.
They don't get to.
Statements relate to Kernodle being.
I'm just glad someone's here to give you hell and not me today. I wasn't in the mood.
Passed out and not waking up. The declarations were made immediately after HJ discovered Kernodle's body. The world can be unpredictable and scary, so having a great lawyer really matters. That's where Morgan & Morgan comes in. The firm has more than 1,000.
Oh, piss on that.
Why is it always a casino machine noise? They talk about that lawyer.
Ridiculous. That's the same lawyer Don Wells has been trying to take his case for years. So, come on. Unless you get rear-ended by a semi, you're shit out of luck with that law firm.
Yeah.
One of the roommates who's passed out and she was drunk last night and she's not waking up. Another woman interrupts and says, "No, we saw." Well, the first woman responds, "Oh, and they saw some man in their house last night." Yeah. The 911 call taker is trying to figure out what is going on and says, "And are you with the patient? Okay, I need someone to keep the phone. Stop passing it around." One of the callers responds, "Can I just tell you what happened pretty much?" And the call taker asks, "What is going on currently? Is someone passed out right now?" A female caller responds, "I don't really know, but pretty much at 4 a.m. Okay, I need to know what's going on right now. If someone is passed out," that's the call taker, "can you find out?" Now that 911 call sounds chaotic. The dispatcher sends an ambulance. And at one point, a woman on the call says about Xana, she is not waking up. The dispatcher says to
I don't get it. Maybe Jules's friend can come in and say, I'm being uncompassionate or not compassionate. However you say it. How in the world can you try to wake up Xana unless you're standing outside the door going, Xana, when you know Ethan was in there too? Wouldn't you be screaming for Ethan? Like, Ethan, are you still here? They knew Ethan was there. They tried to call him.
His Jeep was outside.
His Jeep was outside and they were trying to call him. All right. So there's had to have been some cleanup because they said there was like really not a lot of blood.
There was blood inside the rooms like crazy, but there was no blood leading between the rooms. That's why they didn't even know that there was anything upstairs until a little bit later, apparently.
So I want to understand the waking up process. Was it, Xana, are you up? Xana, crazy shit happened last night. I don't know if I dreamt it or what. Xana, are you up? By this time, 8 hours later, the smell of blood had to have been present.
Oh, yeah.
It has a very, almost like a metal smell at that time.
Mm-hmm. And not just the blood, but the body releases lots of things.
Yeah.
Times 4.
Yep. Times 4. And yeah, even though supposedly a door was open, they still had the heat a cranking because it was like 21 degrees that night. So it's carrying it through all the vents and everything.
Well, and I'm trying to figure out the discrepancy that I'm having with this story is because it doesn't go with what Christy Consalvis told us. Because in Christy Consalvis' story, it's as if they got called over because they couldn't get Xana's door open. They got the door open. He looked inside, freaked the hell out because then he sees the bloody scene. Hunter Johnson does. And he yells at the girls, get the F out and call 911. And then the 911 call is made and everybody's freaking out. That's not what's going on in this call. It really does almost sound like what you just did, that like her door was just kind of getting knocked on and it was locked maybe instead of being blocked by Ethan. The way that Christy's story sounds, maybe it was actually locked and they couldn't actually get it open. And that's that's all they were doing. And that's the only way that it would make sense, that they're not stating there's blood everywhere. Something happened. There's blood everywhere and freaking out and crying. They're just like, she drank too much and won't wake up. That kind of tells me the door wasn't open. So I'm confused about Christy's story.
But the whole she drank too much, that had to have been an assumption because they weren't with Xana and Ethan.
Well, Bethany saw them at the party, but we still don't have all the truth about Xana and Ethan's timeline either. Like we have Jeff Kernodle saying that he talked with her around midnight and she told him that her and Ethan were already home. But we have everyone else in the PCA saying that they got home around like 1:45, but we don't really know anything. If they went back and forth, if they actually were home, if they went home, then went back to the party. We don't know. And Bethany literally in the PCA just says she saw them around 9:00. There's from 9 p.m. to like 1:45 where we really have no idea about anything except for what Jeff said about midnight.
Mm-hmm.
the ambulance. Multiple reporting parties on the phone advised, saying the roommate on scene is passed out and not waking up, believes she got drunk last night, and unintelligible about a male being in the room with them. Another dispatcher on the line says, That one I copy about 20-year-old female unconscious trying to get further. The dispatcher then says, okay, I need someone to stop passing the phone around because I've talked to 4 different people. A woman then says, okay, sorry, they just gave me the phone. Is she breathing? The call taker asks. And then the woman says, hello? And then the call taker asks again, is she breathing?
Okay, question is, again, nobody's accusing the kids. We know who's going to trial. Okay? It's Brian Bushy Koberger. Is she breathing? No. Well, you couldn't tell that if you're just knocking on the door.
Yeah, but are they actually looking at her? Because later on, it's like they're trying to like coax each other to have to go and look. And so that's why I'm just really confused about the door thing, because if the door's open and you can see that she's not breathing, how the frick are you not seeing her covered in nothing but red stuff? Like, that makes no sense to me. They're never going to ever make this make sense to me.
No is a definitive statement. So when the dispatcher is saying, is she breathing? No. That is a definitive statement. Yes and no are truth-telling statements. So to say, no, she's not breathing means you're over her.
Mm-hmm. That's why it's confusing.
The woman says, no. Now, the woman, who is a neighbor of the King Road house, then tells the surviving roommates that they need to talk to the 911 call taker. Then there's discussion about whether a defibrillator is available. Police arrive, and then an officer says, I think we have a homicide. I want to bring in Rich Schoenstein. He is a trial attorney. So, Rich, it's interesting to me. They're filing.
It's a neighbor, but it's Hunter's girlfriend.
It's Hunter's girlfriend.
Yeah,
exactly. And we have heard many of 911 calls. Not picking on the dispatcher, because I don't need anyone coming in here yelling, saying, well, now you're picking on the dispatcher. When have you ever heard them not walk someone through CPR?
Yeah. And if you notice, if you go and look at the transcript yourself, and I didn't notice this the first time, but people brought it to my attention, the dispatcher mentions that Xana's 20 before she hears that Xana's 20 from the caller. Like, she says it to dispatch, 20-year-old female unconscious, before they actually answer that Xana's 20. It's kind of weird. Like, why do you know that before they've even said it?
I did not even pick up on that.
I didn't either. And then someone in chat mentioned it, and we went back through it, and I'm like, holy crap. She really does say it to dispatch before it's even answered. That's kind of creepy.
It almost makes you think there's 2 911 calls.
Yeah, or again, they're taking crap out just like they did the text messages. And for what reason? That's just so stupid.
This motion in limine for the 911 call. And we've heard 911 calls played at trial many, many times, many trials over the years. So is this pretty common to have to file that type of motion to admit something like a 911 call, where you would call the dispatcher to the stand or somebody from the 911 center and they would admit that?
So it's a little bit backwards, because usually when I see this, it's a motion by the side that doesn't want the evidence let in to exclude that. And this seems to be a motion in advance to make sure that the evidence can go in. So the prosecution is affirmatively trying to make sure that their evidence is going to be allowed. I don't think that's particularly uncommon. And I agree with you. We see 911 calls all the time. They plainly fall, in most cases, in the hearsay exceptions that the prosecution is talking about here, and they get entered into evidence all the time.
One thing that I thought was interesting was just the content of this 911 call. You know, for many, many months and months, and really more than 2 years now, we've been wondering what was said on that 911 call. We knew it was for an unconscious person, but it paints a very chaotic scene. And just the fact that they're saying that, you know, that Xana, we now know, was unconscious. She had been stabbed to death. So I don't know if they were just being polite on the 911 call and not saying, look, my friend appears to have blood on her or what have you. We don't know how she was found or what she looked like when she was found, but, you know, unconscious person. And then the police get there, and this is clearly a homicide.
Yeah, I thought that was a little bit odd too, right? You expect to hear, oh my gosh, my friend is covered in blood.
You would expect to hear that. And we've been talking about cause of death. Now, one of the parents, I do not remember which one, said on their child's death certificate, it says clearly homicide. Now, we know there's cause of death and means of death. So cause of death would be homicide. Means, I don't know how they do it in Idaho, would be obviously stabbing.
Yeah.
But I mean, the truth is coming out now. So what we've heard for years, we can just go bleep out of our brain because now it's coming out.
Yeah.
Little by little.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much about the wounds or anything that they're going to end up releasing before trial, but I do know that there's way too many differences in descriptions for there to have just been one weapon. Way too many descriptions.
And I do want to talk about that because everything we have heard about Bushy is that he is a grade A loner. Some people call him an incel. He has no close friends to speak of. I mean, really, any close attachments he had were back in Pennsylvania. They weren't there. He didn't really know anybody too well around Washington, except for the people, around like his apartment complex and the people that he somewhat interacted with. And it was just kind of an outside looking in type of relationship. So to have someone help you with this, wouldn't you have to have kind of a circle of friends?
Well, we don't know a lot about his personal relationships. I know he probably didn't have a lot because he had just gotten there, but we do know he knew a couple of people because we have a couple of people that have come out and talked from Washington. But he doesn't seem like somebody that would have close relationships anyway if we get into like the autism thing. And he stuck to himself a lot in the classroom. So yeah, I don't really feel like he would have had like people that he could have trusted enough to help him with this, especially in the timeline that they're given. Especially whenever we hear that he was fired as a kid as being a fish filleter person because he didn't know how to use a freaking knife. So how are you going to go from not being able to fillet a fish to being able to apparently take out 4 people in the middle of the night on 3 stories in a 3-story house with a bunch of people around that you didn't even know were going to be there, and you just happened to be able to leave like nothing anywhere but some transfer DNA that could have been picked up out of a gas pump, and nobody knows honestly like which way you came in, which way you went out. Like nobody really knows anything. Everyone's just guessing. There was no DNA or blood from crime scene to crime scene, like immaculately cleaned up, and now suddenly you're carrying a vacuum. You left one latent footprint, so you must have like one leg. Like the whole thing doesn't make any sense. It's none of it. I have no puzzle pieces.
Okay.
The problem here.
Said you don't kill 4 and leave 2 women at that. Come on, people.
Yeah, and especially one that's apparently like awake and yelling, "Shut the F up the stairs," and opening the door 5,000 times. Like, I just don't believe any of it at this point. Honestly, and at this point, I mean, I'm not saying that obviously we can't dispute the fact that this crap happened. But if you think about the fact that, okay, Xana was wearing all black. That's in the photo that was last taken at the apartment complex, right? Then we have Dylan with her bushy eyebrowed artwork. And like I said, she says she found it really odd that it didn't speak to her and that it didn't come towards her, and that she knew that he was white. She just didn't know how he was white. To me, that's telling me that you're tripping balls on something, looking at the wall art on your wall, on your white walls, and your brain is like putting that together with the fact that Xana was wearing all black, and somehow weeks later you suddenly remember seeing a fireman, and somehow a vacuum comes into play, or a vacuum-like object comes into play. Like, I can't even guarantee that she saw anybody, or if her brain just created this entity because of what she was hearing and how she was feeling at the time that she was hearing it. So there's really no guarantee whatsoever that she just saw anything. There's really not. To me, it sounds like her brain created something. And just because she saw or might have seen one person doesn't mean that that's the only person that was in that house. That just might have been the only person she might have seen. So there's a lot to it, especially whenever she can't even be honest Well, I can't say she's not being honest whenever she's sitting here trying to say, I don't remember. It could have been a dream. Like, she's making herself unreliable for a reason. That's like the only consistency is that she's inconsistent in knowing if it's true or not. She keeps going back and forth.
Too many inconsistencies, too many rumors, but those are going to continue. But DC Primetime, I'm confused about this as well. What's up with the vacuum?
Yeah, vacuum type objects. And it doesn't say like it's an actual vacuum. No one ever said that they hear a vacuum turn on. And they're giving the timeline like 7 to 8 minutes. If you go from the TikTok to the camera picking up sound at 4:17 and then the car leaving at 4:20, that's 4:12 of Xana technically being, well, what they're trying to tell us is that they supposedly have proof because they have her TikTok records as part of those self-authenticating records that were turned in as Xana's TikTok records. So I'm guessing that there's whatever movement was made at 4:12 proves it was done by, like, I guess somebody's actual hand, whether it be a like, maybe a scroll, I don't know. So if she was actually able to physically be on TikTok at 4:12 and the assailant is apparently leaving an SV1 at 4:20, that's 8 freaking minutes. He didn't have a vacuum. There's no way that the person had a vacuum. What time and what are you doing? What, you're going to vacuum up liquid with a vacuum? Most people in my chat thought that it was somebody maybe carrying Ethan's golf clubs because of golf club bag being carried around would have sort of like the shadowy shape of like a actual vacuum, like a household vacuum. And we know for a fact that Ethan's golf clubs were actually or might still be actually in evidence with the defense team, along with his vehicle and his brother's vehicle. So just given the fact the defense had it in evidence and now there's something sort of similar maybe being seen by a girl tripping a little bit, maybe it was the golf clubs and really not a vacuum because we don't really know what her full description was.
Okay, now let's play devil's advocate because, I mean, you have 2 people left in the home that aren't exactly of sound mind.
Mm-hmm.
I know some people say, oh, those are just rumors. No, they had some subs going on in their system. They would be real easy to take out. Who leaves witnesses behind? Not saying I want anything to happen to Dylan and Bethany. Goodness, no.
Yeah, that's what people think a lot too. And I'm like, how are y'all that like daft to think that we're like saying that they shouldn't be alive right now? No, that's not what we're saying.
Oh God, no.
People are wild. They just assume the most ridiculous. Yeah, it's just wild. But it makes no sense, especially with as inebriated as she's saying that she is. Because if she honestly was just, like I said, maybe in her room looking at her walls, hallucinating about what she's actually seeing while she's hearing stuff, that's an easy takedown. And Bethany, honestly, we don't really know how messed up she was because we haven't heard anything about Bethany except for she saw Ethan and Xana at the party at 9 o'clock. She was home at 1:45. That's all we know. We don't really know if she was drinking or doing anything else. We don't know. All we know is about whatever Dylan was doing.
It almost makes you wonder if they didn't take something else because, I mean, they each have their own room.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people are assuming that old driver boy does more than just drive stuff around. I personally believe
his record. I think looking at his record, that is a safe assumption.
Mm-hmm.
Hence why everybody called his ass.
Yeah, because I understand like he's supposed to be like this driver thing or whatever, but it's just odd to me that you're as young as you are and you're just driving all these drunk, gorgeous college chicks around all the time. There's got to be something else going on here. And the whole 210 thing with Dylan is really interesting because it doesn't really tell you anything else besides that she contacted him. And if he had just left 14 minutes before that, like I'm pretty sure he would have responded because he's obviously still in the area to drive around. But what was it for? Was it like, do they have some sort of personal connection? Because whenever he came out and talked, he never mentions knowing her. He mentions knowing Xana, Maddie, and Kaylee, but he never mentions knowing Dylan. And that's the one that we end up finding is like the weirdest, craziest part of the timeline now. Why did he never mention knowing her? Well, why did he hide that?
Well, and it also makes you wonder why he would hide it, because I can tell you what, he knows a ton of kids around the campus.
Mm-hmm. And then he also tried to say in these interviews that he didn't even know for like a few days. And I'm like, okay, for one, you work for the freaking university. So you got the damn Vandal alert at 1:04 p.m. You know damn well where those girls live. You obviously have personal relationships to a certain level with them because they text your phone. So how would you not know, Mrs. You literally work at the school and your wife works for the police department. And then, he took a week off because he was so sad. You didn't know for 3 days, but you took a week off?
Distraught, and he took a week off, which,
Yeah.
hell, give me a week off anytime, but what was going on?
Yeah. Like, it's insane. You didn't even know for 3 days, but then you were so distraught you needed to take a week off. That doesn't make sense. You knew, bro.
Saying, I'm really scared. Something about somebody wearing all black. She's trying to get in touch with the other roommates. It kind of raises a lot of questions to me about whether she was hearing more going on than what we've heard in the past about hearing somebody crying, a man.
Okay, now we did read in the probable cause affidavit that Dylan said she could hear Xana crying.
Right.
Now, I get it. I'd be like, she had a fight with her boyfriend, but with everything else going on, I would assume there's something more. Again, I don't know exactly what she had taken, exactly what Bethany had going on, if they decided to give themselves a little bumpity bump, thinking that they were imagining it. I don't know. But we talked about scared straight. When the adrenaline pumps, all that shit gets out of your system real quick. And I still want to know, when Brian was arrested, he wanted to know who else was arrested.
Well, we don't know if that's true, because that only came from Brian Inton. And I've called him out for that too, because it's actually now part of the court record. There was a document that was filed by the defense, and it was about his arrest in Pennsylvania. And it mentions how the media reported that this was said, and it's like a redacted sentence. And the only thing that came out was that Brian Inton came out and said he heard from some cop over there, but didn't say what agency. Like, it was a bunch of like third-party hearsay boo-boo. And then whenever he came out and said it, he was like, oh, but then I couldn't verify it. I'm like, well, then why the frick are you out here saying it? Because now the entire world thinks that he actually said that. And that might really not be true whatsoever. He might have really not said anything. Him and his family were held at gunpoint for over 3 hours before he was even taken down to the police station.
That shit drives me insane. We can't get anywhere as far as understanding goes with all of these rumors, and the probable cause is scary enough without throwing in the extras. But
then to find out that most of it's all false. Even the state came out at like some point a few months ago. Bill Thompson stood up in court at some point and said that the probable cause affidavit was basically like useless, irrelevant.
Oh, I loved hearing that. I was like, are you kidding me? You had a judge sign off of it on it.
Yep.
And go across country. You had U.S. Marshals, FBI, and everyone going through his trash and drug him out of his house.
Mm-hmm.
His dad was outside the next day cleaning up the glass.
Yeah. And he would like go on jogs throughout the neighborhood by himself solo every single day. Like, they watched him do this, and they still chose to bust into the house at 1 something in the morning. I think it was, I get lost on the time. I think it was like 1 something in the morning, because he was in a black hoodie about to go outside on the back porch, and then went out to his car and then had a bag of like green leafy stuff. I'm like, so the dude was going to go smoke outside. Apparently he went to his car to get a stash. Like, and that's what y'all busted him for, because he was like going back and forth. They found nothing in the car. They found nothing anywhere. So they were worried about what? That was their excuse for going in and busting down the house. And then they didn't even take him from the kitchen. He was in his bedroom by the time they got into the house. Jeez. So the whole thing was a freaking mess. And of course, Nancy Grace comes out here and says he was hanging out in his freaking underwear in the kitchen. And I'm like, no, he was in a freaking black hoodie about to go outside. Why do you have fantasies about him in his underwear, Nancy? Like, that's all she ever says. It's ridiculous.
She loves that shit, because I heard that talking about the Pennsylvania house, that he was sitting there when he was confronted in Pennsylvania. He was putting things in baggies and he was sitting there in his pajamas.
Yeah, she says he's in his underwear. She talks about him being in his boxer briefs or boxers or some shit like that. And I'm like, girl. Calm down.
Question: why was Dylan calling that married ass man after he dropped off Kaylee and Maddie?
Rumor. And that's another question though. Why wouldn't she have known? Yeah. Like, wouldn't she have just asked the girls, hey, was Eric the driver? Like, why did she have to ask him? Like if they had been home, like why wouldn't she have just been able to ask them to? So that makes me think that she wanted him to do something for her.
Yeah, I think he does more deliveries than just bringing people home safely. Sorry, I said it.
And saying, it's okay, I'm here to help you. These text messages are really disturbing.
Yeah, they are disturbing, and they're hard to decipher for exactly the reason you say. You can't really trust the immediate perception of the people sending those text messages because it was the middle of the night, because they were probably drunk. So they're not taking in information the same way they would in another condition, and they're not conveying the information. Some of those text messages, right there, they're not grammatically correct, but they're also sort of in short form, and they're a lot of initials, and they're kind of hard to follow. So you have people who may not be observing events with the benefit of clarity and may not be communicating what it is they are observing in a precise manner.
And another thing that's, still a question that we can't answer at this point in time. I mean, the roommate DM is saying, I'm scared though. And BF is saying, well, come down here, run. It's better than being alone.
I don't think she said that. I really don't. Because she says, where'd it go? I've got the wrong page. I don't think it says scared. I think it says screwed because of the way there's a capital R taking out the A. I've been wrong before.
Right here.
I've been wrong before. I can be wrong again, and I can live with it. I am not I don't work for the prosecution or the defense. So spank me and put me in the corner.
And yet they don't call 911. It seems like a very confusing type of time period. Everything that went on, I know they were drunk, but is this something the defense will make hay of at trial?
Yeah, well, I think the defense is going to try. The defense here is reasonable doubt, right? This is a straightforward reasonable doubt case. You don't have enough proof that the defendant is the person who did this, and you don't have accurate storytelling of what was going on in that house in the middle of the night. So if I was on the defense, I would say this is all very odd as to what's happening between the two other people who were in the house. Was something really going on? Was not going on? Were they scared? Were they drunk? You don't know. You can't be certain as to the meaning of any of it. And I would try to convince the jury that somehow gives them reasonable doubt. But, you're prosecuting the case. You only have the evidence you have. These are the text messages you have. This is the 911 call you have. That's what you've got to go forward with.
Okay, I'm going to switch screens because I didn't have it right in front of me. Okay, of course, this is redacted because it's public. If you read down at 4:24 and 58 seconds, DM text Bethany. I had it incorrect. I thought it was Bethany texting her. That's why it's really important to go back through this. She said, I'm screwed, though. Okay, in the word scared, there's no W. DM text Bethany. I'm SC capital R WD, though.
Mm-hmm.
There's no W in the word scared.
I feel like she didn't go down to the next line to click the A for scared because the R, the E, and the W are together on the keyboard. So I think screwed is probably like what she wrote. I don't see how it could have been scared given that.
And a lot of people say, we're not going to split hairs over it because it's all going to come up.
Yeah.
It's all going to come up. I put it on the screen for you, Jesse.
But then you also notice how Bethany said it's better than being alone, though. How would she be able to say that to Dylan if she didn't know that Dylan was truly alone. Like, I don't know if she means like alone in her room, or like she knows everyone else in the house is no longer alive.
Okay, let's look at it this way. You're in the house. You're only getting communication from someone else in the house. And that person from upstairs says they saw somebody in a ski mask, mentions other things, and says, I'm scared though. What would stop the person from downstairs who has a door that they can get right out without being seen? Why would they not call 911?
Yeah, why would they not run?
Why wouldn't they run? Run the hell out of the house to the next door neighbor.
Well, I mean, damn, they had car there. There was a car there. Bethany had a car there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, she could have ran out.
But there's no W in scared. So maybe Bethany took it as Dylan saying, I'll be screwed if anyone calls the police and I need time to clean some shit up. I don't know. I was not there. I understand people are very passionate about this and they don't want the girls picked on and they think they were there and they think they know them. Maybe they do. But something prevented one of the roommates, one of the two, from calling 911. And again, no one is saying they were involved. Now we're going to get to a hot topic. This is what's going to get us into a lot of trouble. This is Steve talking about the text messages. Okay. I've had a lot of people messaging me going, have you seen the Goncalves family and how they keep promoting their GoFundMe? Well, they're not going to promote anybody else's. How come no one's not helping Xana's father get from Arizona? How come no one's helping Madison's family? I think they all kind of have something going on.
Yeah, the Gonzalez's is just the one that's most contributed to, because if you look at the differences in the numbers, it's pretty gross.
Harlot said if you accidentally hit the uppercase button instead of the A, it capitalizes the R. But what about the W? I'm going to do it right now. Give me a second. Hold on.
Yeah, because there's still a W.
Okay. S, C. Doing the capital. Nope. Mine doesn't do it. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on. But nothing would have prevented me from calling 911. Sorry. That's just me.
And both of them are showing that they're both feeling some type of way about what's happening. And they're both collectively deciding it's not going to happen to me and I'm not going to call the cops.
Well, and let's face it, mainstream media, or as some people call it, legacy media, court TV, law and crime, places like that, they're not about to speculate and say screwed.
Oh, of course not. Of course not. It doesn't work for their narrative.
So they have to continue saying scared until it all comes out.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to Steve. Cross your fingers. We're probably going to get our asses handed to us, but let's go.
Big developments in the Brian Kohberger murder case out of Idaho, with new evidence being unsealed and released to the public. He's accused of stabbing to death 4 University of Idaho students, this all back in November of 2022. And what we're seeing in these court documents are chilling words from the 2 surviving roommates the night of the murders. And someone who's been pouring through all of these documents, Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft, who joins us now in the studio. Kelly, tell us more about what we are learning in this case.
Hey there, Julia. So yes, these just posted to the docket yesterday. So we have been reviewing these really bombshell evidence coming out of this case. For the first time, we are seeing transcripts of these texts that's giving us, roommates Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk started messaging one another about not being able to reach their other room.
Okay, I think we're good there. Let's get to Steve. All right. Him and that goofy attorney, he started to remind me more and more of damn Tony Mathis.
And Kaylee's 2 surviving roommates. Let's take a listen to that.
What's that?
I just don't see the point of Shannon Gray. Like you just like Tony Mathis. I literally compared the 2 of them on my live. In my video, whenever I reviewed this little thing, like, what is the point of him? He just sits there like being emotionally responsive, which is not what a spokesperson is supposed to do. He's speaking with them instead of for them, the same way that Tony does. And it seems like Steve has to get Shannon's permission to do pretty much anything when it comes to mainstream, the same way that Seth has to get permission to get $5 from his sister from Tony. The whole thing is just wild to me. And I don't see the point of him. Like, they're paying this dude for what? To sit there and do what? he didn't help stop the house. He's not helping get them into the courtroom, because there was a whole thing about that in the closed session on the 23rd of January. And the state was like, I don't know why they're here. We didn't tell them to show up. Like there's all kind of stuff. There's just all kinds.
100%. It's like they have to have a wingman. I mean, I guess I get it, but you should be able to freely speak for yourself, because I don't see anyone ever cutting in saying, no, we can't talk about that.
Yeah, no joke.
What struck me is, it's not like Hollywood. It's not a scripted thing. It's not like what you would see on a TV set. That was a raw, emotional breakdown of two girls that were scared for their life. There's part of me that knows that, like how that house was, there's a lot of pranking going on. There's a lot of partying. So there's part of them that was probably thinking, is this a prank? Am I getting messed with? I know for a fact my daughter loved pranking people. So my heart goes out to those two girls. I'd have a hard time if I was one of their parents to have my daughter put through what they've been put through. I mean, we sat 2.5 years on what? Why did this need to be hidden from the public? Why did these girls have to be dragged through all this? These are the type of things that why I do these interviews and why we push back a little bit, because I think a lot of people are questioning right now why this was hidden.
Well, I don't think we're concerned about why it was hidden, because we haven't gone to trial yet. If we see things before the trial, it interrupts the investigation and it taints a jury. That's kind of common sense. Now, I don't know if you have heard this, Jules. I know you've heard this true crime reaction. I'm not surprised by this at all, but they are in the works right now for a Netflix deal.
Yeah.
And
I saw that in my video. I'm like, bro, you're like the biggest Hollywood there is right now in this entire situation. What are you talking about?
Okay. All right. So you heard about it too.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we're talking bukus. We're talking probably 7, 8 episodes. It's not just going to be a movie. Will Dylan and Bethany be a part of it, or will it just be the 4 families?
We don't really, do we know all 4 families are involved?
I've only heard one.
Me too. Just them. Just the Gonsalveses.
Okay.
Yeah, and from what we can understand, Julia, so they were out and about for a while in, the court files, but they were just posted to the docket yesterday, and that's when everyone really got the
Footnote, I do not blame any of these families for using American capitalism and writing a book about their life and what happened to their children. I do not blame any family member for talking to Netflix at all. At all. I was just asking, has anyone else heard that? Because, well, we know how things float around the damn internet.
First look at it.
Some of them are months old. Kelly Craft, thank you so much for all of that information. We do want to get reaction as well from our trial attorney, Marjorie Mesidor, who is standing by. Marjorie, let's talk about that sealing, because you can hear that father talking about how it's upsetting him. And it seems that they had no warning that this was going to be released at this time. We're about 5 months away from the August trial date. But what do you think about the attorneys on both sides? They've been filing almost everything under seal, and that's not normal.
I don't know how the hell you have kept up, because they do file a lot of stuff under seal. I'm not doing a FOIA for all of that, but there was a couple of weeks there in a row. It was like boom, 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 boom. It was like ping pong.
Yeah, the motions to suppress and then the death penalty stuff. That was a lot. And now we have this stuff. On the 24th, on February 24th, whenever it was just a bunch of titles in the case summary page, there was 43 filings that were going to be dropping from just February 24th. But then they ended up sealing all of the exhibits, so it dropped it down to about like 26 new documents. It's a lot of info.
And they can't just put it in layman's terms, which I understand because it's for the court. But for a dumb fuck like me, it's like, can you just break it down for me?
Yeah, it's a lot.
Normal for a case.
So Because we're dealing with a public record, there's a presumption that the public is going to be notified about what's going on, particularly when we're dealing with a crime, because the plaintiff is the public, right? It's the state, it's the county who is the plaintiff, the aggrieved. So in this circumstance where they're doing everything under seal, they are probably trying to cover themselves because of how salacious the crimes are, the ages of the individuals who are involved, and how public the crime is.
And let's face it, it's not the first massacre in America, even in 2022. But these are very, very attractive people whose lives, I'm not saying I'm interested in their lives because I'm like double their age. I mean, shit, I could be every one of their parents.
There's a balancing act that takes place that for a prosecutor and a defense to validly represent their clients and at the same time keep the victims' families and those who are collaterally and directly involved informed about the pace, about what is going to be revealed when. And it's a very hard and delicate balance. At the end of the day, this did not happen to any one of us individually. We're watching it unfold, so there's a level of separateness that.
Yeah, I get what she's saying, but I don't really need a lecture from court TV.
No, I do agree that it's kind of crappy that they weren't warned ahead of time that this stuff was going to come out, because it is pretty close to like the situation. But I mean, when I was dealing with my stuff, it would be 6-7 months in between phone calls from the prosecutor's office. So it's not shocking to me that they weren't given a heads up, but it does kind of suck. But I do question why Steve said in that interview that Christy said that she wished that the 911 call never came out. Like, I don't know why, considering that like nothing about Kaylee is mentioned. I just don't know why she would say that.
You know, I do the best I can to put myself in other people's shoes. I mean, me personally, I would just want to be taken into an office and said, this is what we have, but we're not going to release it to the public.
Yeah, like I would want to know personally.
I would know personally. I wouldn't want it out there. I wouldn't want it showing up all over YouTube, local news, and everything. And I am very surprised that Dylan and Bethany's parents haven't taken more of a legal stance to protect them.
Well, I don't think they can. They're adults. They're not kids.
Well, they're adults, exactly. Because, you know, when Daily Mail, who is not based in this country, released their names, all hell broke loose.
Now, see, they also, I think, were they the ones? Someone also went and took a bunch of pictures of Dylan's minor sister at the time that was jogging. And a bunch of people were like, oh, it's Dylan. Oh, it's Dylan. No, this was like a 16 or 17-year-old sister of Dylan. So they were flashing a minor's photos all over the place, too, for a while.
Yeah, and I just thought that was ridiculous.
Yeah, that was bad. That was bad.
Because that's just nuts.
Mm-hmm.
So going forward, what do you think is going to happen? Because it gets crazier every day.
Well, I mean, at this point, at least to me, and I've watched every motion, gone over, I mean, yeah, like everything in court live, gone over it extensively in videos, read every document, dug into things in the background, get information from here, from there, from all over the place. There's just way too much reasonable doubt in this entire situation, in my opinion. They claim that they can't physically put him at the location. They have people coming in and doing things for the defense that normally put bad guys away. Cyray is coming in pro bono, and he's still on the case, regardless of what some channels have tried to say. He is in the most recent documents that just dropped as still being part of Brian Kohberger's expert witnesses. Now we have Bicca Barlow from the DNA side of things now taking over as trial attorney instead of Jay Logsden being at trial. He's still like supporting trial and will do things for motions in between, but come the trial, it's going to be this DNA expert lawyer, which is the best move they could have made. And I think that they waited to tap her in to see what they were going to do with the IgG stuff. Now, the defense has never said that it wasn't Brian's DNA. They've never said that. They've never denied that. I believe the word that Ann Taylor has used is placed. She's never said planted. She's just always said placed. And it's just always been curious as to how they freaking got to their answer. And we've got way too many discrepancies, way too many reports missing, way too many things that the feds did that they were refusing to answer for, way too much information not making sense, and way too many unknown male DNAs, not only in that house, but now on the victims themselves, that do not lead back to Bryan Kohberger. Because in the same document that talks about Maddie's DNA and the mixture and the likenesses and all this other boo-boo, if at the end of the day, the state literally said that they admitted the mixture into the grand jury as exculpatory evidence to Bryan in his favor, and that whenever further independent testing was done, Bryan Kohberger was completely excluded from the mixture underneath Maddie's nails. So we've got unknown male blood on the stair rail, which we now have proof of for sure that Dylan walked down to get to Bethany's room at some point, because they were in the bottom floor for a while, but that's not where they started, and that's definitely not where they ended up. But at one point, those stairs were used. Then we have unknown male DNA that doesn't match the other male DNA inside of a glove around the crime scene. I believe it was found. I believe it was found outside near the back patio, but I could be wrong on that detail. But it was found in or around the crime scene with blood inside of it, meaning that the person was wearing it and got cut on the inside. So that's unknown still. Then we have now this unknown under Maddie's nails, and it could possibly be two unknown under Maddie's nails, because they haven't determined whether it's Maddie and Kaylee in one unknown or Maddie and two unknowns. Like, how do you not care enough to get to that point? Then we also find out that before they even had Bryan Kohberger's name, they are in quotations telling us there was already a main suspect before they had Bryan's name at all. And what, are we supposed to just forget that ever existed? There's way too much here, and not enough that actually puts him at the scene. They have 7 minutes network issue difference. And if he really did go the direction he's claiming he went, we've had every newscaster and every YouTuber that can afford to fly out there and waste gas running around in a freaking rental car prove that once you go that direction, you lose service. And we've learned so much about tower data, about how even if you're going forward, if your phone can't get to the tower in front of you because it's too much traffic, then it'll go to any tower it can, and it'll put you in any direction, even when you're not going. There's way too many inconsistencies. Way too many inconsistencies. They have not done a job whatsoever of proving anything at this point. And they can't do trial by surprise. So if it's not at least something that the defense knows by now, I'm not saying that they might not have something that maybe the public doesn't know. But with everything that we know now, there's just no way. There's just no way.
I mean, the way it stands right now, there's a lot of questions out. So they better have their I's dotted and their T's crossed when they get there. Because I can't tell you how many times we've watched a trial thinking there's got to be more to this.
Mm-hmm. It's way too much.
Sorry, my printer just went off. Well, you guys, this has been an amazing show. I want everyone to go and subscribe to my good friend, Jules of All Trade. Please, huge round of applause, because she knows her shit. Well, girlfriend, I love talking to you. I did not mean to keep you this long because you have the morning off. I wanted you to have some time to have a cappuccino and get ready for your afternoon.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely time for some more coffee. Probably going to try to get an episode of Grey's Anatomy in before I have to clock in.
All right. Well, you enjoy that. Come back and see us anytime. I come by and see you. And LR said thank you both. Woo, I love it. Yep, Jules is the best. She is amazing. Thank you guys, everyone, for being here. And I think we can all agree on one thing. This is confusing AF.
It is. My mind is melted all the time.
Sloppy.
Yeah.
Thank you all for being here. You guys are the absolute best friends that anybody on the nasty YouTube streets could ask for. Jules, I will text you in a moment. You guys enjoy the rest of your Monday. Try to catch up on that hour of sleep. And if I don't catch you later this afternoon, I will be back here tomorrow at 9 a.m. Please put a 1 in chat if you plan to be here, because you're going to like it. Jules, again, my hat off to you. Well, I'm not wearing a hat, but you get the metaphor.
All right. Good afternoon, you guys. Y'all have a great day.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.